And welcome to the Suppress Herald podcast. It is Tuesday, the 23rd of July, and what a week it's been. We have had attempt on President Trump's life. We've had the cluster following the attempt on the president's life, and we have the swirling for the week. And here we are on Tuesday, the 23rd. And we all know now that Joe Biden has dropped out of the campaign. But looking back, it's really kind of an interesting week in the Suppress Herald editorial side. It was a typical week. Um, as we know, the national distrust for local news owns the Suppress Herald and all the rest of the papers in Maine. They didn't never miss an opportunity to propagandize. And it was a typical week. I went through the editorial pages for 6 days that they print the paper, and there were 33 liberal letters to the editor or editorials on the editorial page. There were three conservative. That's very typical, 33 to 3. And there were 8 neutral letters to the editor editorials, just subjects that are kind of neutral subjects, not so much political. And very typical. That follows the trend that we've seen for 2 years now. And that tracks, actually, it's gotten much worse. And that's because we're in a political heightened season. It's a campaign. And it's Trump derangement syndrome in the newsroom. And it shows itself again and again. And we'll start out with, I'm going to take you through the week in review in the propaganda pages here at the Suppress Herald. And we'll start with right off on Tuesday. And here's the first article that we review and find some interesting tidbits on the propaganda side. Judge dismisses Trump classified documents case. And she dismissed it because the prosecutor, in her opinion that she wrote, 90 some page opinion, basically said that the prosecutor, Jack Smith, was illegally put on the case. He was not confirmed by the Senate, and he was not funded by Congress, and therefore it is a clear case that it's illegal. If anybody remembers, go back to one of my previous podcasts. I talked about the immunity case in Trump's immunity from prosecution, which the Supreme Court decided on the side of, yes, presidents have wide immunity on a lot of the official actions, official acts that they partake while they're in office. And there was a concurring opinion by Justice Clarence Thomas, who basically laid out the case that Jack Smith was illegally appointed and that this never should have been a case anyway. And I believe Judge Cannon was given the roadmap to write her opinion. And the fact that Judge Thomas is concurring on that, obviously, means if this thing goes to the Supreme Court, more than likely it's going to fall on the side of, yeah, you can't appoint somebody to that position without advice and consent with the Senate, confirmation, and funding from Congress. So here's this judge dismisses the Trump classified documents case, and they rip into the judge, of course, because the legal system is the problem now. They've got lawfare every which way but loose. And one by one, these things are being thrown out by the courts when they actually get in front of a real set of judges, real court. We have these activists, completely deranged legal system, New York State, for example, New York City, and judges doing unethical and really outside the law rulings against Trump. Get him at all costs. But here we are, and this is the article by the Associated Press. And here's the clincher. The order is the latest example of the Trump appointed judge handling the case in ways that have benefited the ex president. No, she's just handling the case according to the law. Very, very disciplined and very, very deliberate. She's doing her homework and making sure she gets right this case that's trying to put a former president in jail. So even before the charges were filed, she generated intense scrutiny during the FBI's investigation when she appointed an independent arbiter to inspect the classified documents recovered during the August 2022 search of Mar-a-Lago, a decision that was later overturned by a unanimous federal appeals court. Yeah, a unanimous federal appeals court of liberal judges, and we haven't seen it go to the Supreme Court. We haven't seen it go to higher courts. That's not said here. What really isn't said here is since then, since she tried to have a master look at those documents, we've discovered that Jack Smith's prosecutorial team tampered with those files, inserted their own jackets, some of them saying classified materials or red jackets, and doing a photo op with false material on the day of the raid. And we've determined that the order and the location of documents, classified documents, was not the same as when they found it. Again, another example, where is the reporting? This is the suppressed information left out of the story. Since then, she has been slow to issue rulings, favoring Trump's strategy of securing delays in all his criminal cases, and has entertained defense arguments that experts say other judges would have dismissed without hearings. Experts, yeah, the experts, the Trump deranged media, biased judges would have not heard those, but she wants to hear the cases. She wants to hear these objections and make sure she dots her I's and crosses her T's on this because it's a freaking former president. In May, she indefinitely canceled the trial date amid a series of unresolved legal issues. They don't talk about the legal issues. They don't tell you what those are. How about falsifying information and tampering with the evidence and doing a fake photo op with tampered with materials? I think that probably would qualify as maybe not quite the normal. But if the media had been reporting on any of this stuff, they would have reported that Jack Smith has been overturned again and again and again and has been found guilty of unethical behavior, over prosecuting, and he's not done. He he punctured attorney-client privilege with Trump. More than likely, that's going to also get to the Supreme Court, and more than likely, that's another reason to throw this out. Actually, Jack Smith, when this is all done and we find out all the things he's done, he should be in jail. Not just lose his license, he should be in jail. And maybe he will be. So that's the Tuesday paper. And in the opinion section, there's a long article, not a letter to the editor because they don't allow those long letters. There's only one right response to the Trump shooting. If we are talking about anything other than ending gun violence in this country, we are simply lying in wait for the next horror. Turn it into gun control. That's a typical lib, and that's the kind of letters that they're putting into the paper. Those are the ones that get, those are the editorials and the letters that get put in the paper. Moving on, the other part of the opinion section, we're still on Tuesday, and this is pretty comical looking back a week. Here's a letter that was published. Biden is the best and only choice. If he did poorly in a debate, so what? insane that they even published these knowing what they absolutely knew in the editorial department. Biden's not fit to continue to be a president. We already know that, much less run for reelection. Then they have a Trump victory will be a climate catastrophe. Of course, climate catastrophe, like it was the last time. It actually had no impact whatsoever on the climate. And I think the best one here of all, this is the Suppress Herald at their very, very best. I don't know who this writer is, but basically a very short letter to the editor. Executive editor's departure a loss. Sad to see editor Steve Greenlee is leaving. He's one of the very best I ever worked with there or anywhere, and a good guy. Farewell, Steve. Patting themselves on the back, saying they have such a great editorial, what is he? Executive editor. I say the executive editor should have left years ago because he's a shameful hack for the Democrat Party. What do you think of that? Maybe I should write that letter, but I'm not sure they'd print it. Kind of doubt it. So we're moving on, and we're in Wednesday. And here we go. This is really good. Iran threat prompted additional security at Trump rally to no avail. This is the biggest crock of you know what that we've ever heard. There was no additional security at Trump's rally. We're finding out there was actually inadequate security at Trump's rally. The good guys, the real Secret Service, were guarding Jill Biden, who had all of 23 people at her event, or something to that effect. Trump has thousands and thousands, and he got second string. And we saw that in action in some of the cases. And we absolutely saw it in action in the people that were running that security detail and what's going on here. So they have this whole thing with the Iran threat. This is like a false flag here to try and divert the attention. The U.S. Secret Service and the Trump campaign were made aware of the latest threat, prompting a surge in resources and assets, according to the officials who spoke on condition of anonymity to discuss sensitive intelligence matters. Prompting a surge in resources. There was no surge in resources in that Pennsylvania field. We know that. A visibly stronger security detail now surrounds Trump and President Joe Biden, and independent candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. received Secret Service protection in the wake of the shooting. Yeah, it took an attempt on the president's life and him actually getting shot for the Secret Service. You know what this all is? When I see all of this, what I see is the complete failure of an entire administration. Everything they do is a cluster. Everything they do is nothing but a disaster. The border, security at the border, a complete and utter disaster. The military, Afghanistan, complete and utter disaster. Now the Secret Service, formerly the pride of the world, our Secret Service, incredibly solid reputation, is now in tatters because of didn't earn it. DEI didn't earn it. And I can tell you, the PepsiCo executive that ended up ahead of the Secret Service, who resigned today, a week later, took her a week to figure out that even the Democrats couldn't stand what she'd done and recognize the incompetence. She finally left. She was a didn't earn it hire. And I think there were a lot of other didn't earn it hires that she made that weakened the Secret Service. So we've got the new ticket with Trump and Vance. So let it begin. George Will. I didn't know this guy still could write or even see a key, see a screen to do it to run on a keyboard. I thought this guy had gone off into the nether. George Will, the biggest hack who calls himself a Republican, who is so far detached from the reality of where conservatives and the Republican Party is. He has no business being in anything. But of course, they drag him out because he's going to go after Vance. Signaling its intention to double down on expanding the movement, Trump has chosen a running mate who has an aptitude for conversions and a convert's pugnacity. George Will. Here's just a couple little quotes from Georgie. Before Donald Trump normalized enveloping grotesque lies in scabrous language, told an audience, including many African Americans, that Republicans will put you all back in chains. uh, just a lot of fancy words, a lot of garbage, and here it is in the Suppress Herald, for sure going after Vance, and I've got more coming. The key danger is Trump's advertised ambition to wield unilateral, unconstrained executive authority even more aggressively than his successor has done. See Biden's student loan forgiveness, immigration law changes, ban by increments of vehicles with internal combustion engines, and on and on. There's no record of this whatsoever in Trump's 4 years in office. And this is just blatant Trump derangement syndrome. Here's another paragraph. Vance embodies the serrated edge of MAGA politics. He checks many boxes of fealty, from praising a favorite of national conservatives, Hungary's autocrat, Viktor Orban, to what Vance delicately calls the post-2020 thing. He says there should have been alternative slates of electors to force a January 6th debate on whether the election was stolen. This counts as MAGA moderation. No, it counts as real, absolute real. There was so much with that election. Nobody wants to, in the media, wants to admit it, but they know it. There was an awful lot wrong there, and all they had to do was look at it, but they refused. No judges ever ruled on anything. They just said, you don't have standing. We don't want to go anywhere near that. So really, really crazy. So we had the attempted assassination of a president. And here's the editorial board at the Suppress Herald. And here's this is supposed to be a lighter take on the news and opinions from Alexandra Petri. Oh, the Washington Post. Oh, those people. Trump derangement syndrome at the Washington Post. It got into that building back in 2015, and everybody has terminal cases of Trump derangement syndrome. The entire building is infected. They need to fumigate it, maybe burn it down, blow it up, and incinerate it to get Trump derangement syndrome out of that building. So here you've got supposed to be tongue in cheek. Look, I am not afraid to say on the record that I think the big bad wolf is an existential threat, that huffing and puffing is going to make so many lives worse. All of our precious institutions are at risk, vulnerable to his hated winds. Blah, 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 blather, blather, blather. Existential threat again. Scare tactics, extremism, ridiculous. And right here in the Suppress Herald, with none of the other side, none of reporting on reality of what's out there. I think this is what may be the best of all of it. This is somebody from the formerly the Week and a Rolling Stone writer. Got a whole bunch of stuff underlined here because this is just the classic crap that you see out there that people just lather up, and the propagandists at places like the Suppress Herald continue to publish and put out there. Republicans have finally broken free of Barack Obama. Barack Obama looms large, but less. Since 2009, we have been engaged in a cosmic battle over whether the 21st century will belong to Obama's multiracial, tolerant America or to the menacing anti Obama reaction of Donald Trump, which seeks to stuff a half century of civic culture and human rights advances back into a bottle and hurl it into oblivion. Let me tell you what Barack Obama's presidency was. It divided the country on racial lines more than anything ever done in America. We have didn't earn it, is now institutionalized in government through all of the departments, ruining the ability to do things well. We're seeing it in every aspect of federal government operations, every single aspect. You've got Pete Buttigieg at the Department of Transportation. Is transportation improved? No. Transportation is a disaster. Security, the Justice Department, Injustice Department we have now. Racial divides, didn't earn it everywhere, just destroyed everything. Now we've got Kamala Harris, who's going to be running for president. And if you criticize her, you're a racist. That's how silly and stupid we've gotten. And it's because of 8 years of Obama using the race card again and again and again, even though he got elected first black president. We got 100 times worse race riots and everything else, all under Obama. He fueled racist sentiments and basically used that as a weapon. Trump's not a racist. Look at the people he had in his cabinet. Look at the people he works with. Look at the people. There's nobody that can make a case that Trump is in any way, shape, or form a racist. But they do that because they've gotten away with it. Here's another paragraph. Both 2024 presidential candidates are byproducts of Obama's presidency. One was publicly humiliated by Obama at the 2011 White House Correspondents' Dinner. A famously raging narcissist, the victim of Obama's black tie barbs, ever eager for revenge, found a movement of angry white men to empower him. Another load of complete and utter crap. What is true is that Obama did insult Donald Trump. It was kind of disgusting. It wasn't comedy, it wasn't funny. And the joke is on Obama because President Trump became President Trump. I think it was Obama that's on a famous recording of all these people saying Trump will never be president. Trump's not going to win. There's no way Trump, and he did. Not only did he win, he beat Hillary Clinton, the exalted one. So they all look bad, and I think that's why they revenge trying to fix the election in 2020. Hell or high water, they were going to steal that because they were so upset. Then we move on, and you've got Project 2025. That's the new thing. They've got to have a bogeyman. They've got to have something to scare people and run against. Project 2025. We're going to hear about this for the next 4 months. Project 2025, the authoritarian playbook compiled by the right-wing Heritage Foundation is not the slapdash Trumpism of 2016, which mixed fakery, jingoism, racism, and old-school Republican nostrums. There is more substance now beneath the Trumpist blather. Trump's selection of J.D. Vance as his vice presidential nominee confirms that the time for intra-party or national compromise is over. The MAGA gang knows what it wants: an authoritarian, ethno-religious state under a tight Trumpist fist, and it has every reason to believe it can be achieved with the help of a complacent or a compliant judiciary. Just The same old blather, blather, blather. Scare, scare, scare. Let me tell you about Project 2025. In a nutshell, and Trump said it's not his platform, and he's not. That's the Heritage Foundation, and that's not him. They're gonna relentlessly try to pin it on Trump, and he should just stop fighting it and talk about what they actually are saying. Liberals and Democrats are chaos and complete mess. Mayhem and chaos. That's what we have in every department in the US government. Look at the post office. They just raised the postage rates massively. They can't deliver the mail. We don't get our mail every day anymore. It's a mess. You go into the post office, it looks like crap. They don't even clean the places, they don't take care of them. That all goes right to the system. It's a mess. Secret Service, Justice Department, FBI, all a mess. Everything in federal government is a mess. And we have millions and millions of people that are making that mess. And Project 2025 is saying, okay, enough. We're going to fix government. Somebody's got to try to do it. So they shouldn't run away from it. They should actually say, yeah, there's a lot of good information there. There's a lot of good, insightful aspirations to try and fix government for the people. But we're not done. The Republicans have finally broken free of Barack Obama. This is just a complete ongoing diatribe of scare tactics. And here's where it finishes. In effect, Republicans have moved beyond their fear of Obama. They feel confident turning not just on trans kids and feminists and immigrants who had once hoped to find safety and affirmation in Obama's America, but on universities and public school systems and entire cities. Democrats are now the reactive party, while MAGA pursues a massive re-engineering of American civic and political culture. Democratic policies appear largely beside the point. The GOP abolishment of abortion rights is properly understood as a prelude to the loss of other rights, including the right to feel like an equal citizen in a democratic republic. Democrats are no longer scrambling to save the Affordable Care Act or student loan forgiveness. The party is scrambling to salvage democracy itself. The fight will take all the party can summon, Obama and much, much more. This is absolute drivel and absolute propaganda. Scare tactics. The Republicans, conservatives have a winning message because America is a mess, and liberals are chaos. That's all they do. They create chaos and mayhem. And here's another example. Here we are moving on. We're now up to Sunday. We're Sunday's paper, and you have in the regular section, Secret Service said to have refused extra Trump security. So we just had articles previous to this that had no basis of fact, just written by some activists who sent it to the paper, who said that they ramped up because of the Iranian threat, they ramped up Secret Service protection, surged more protection. And now it's come out that they actually have it in writing that they requested for 2 years additional security and were denied. And what's even worse, maybe, is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. being also denied complete any Secret Service protection. He's running for president. He's not winning anything, but he's got a percentage of the vote and he's got a legitimate campaign. He's raising money. He's campaigning around the country. He's on the ballot in, at least last I knew, something like 25 states. He's a legitimate candidate for president. And he's a Kennedy whose father and uncle were murdered, assassinated. It is absolutely reprehensible and sick that Biden and Mayorkas, that piece of absolute crap that runs Homeland Security and the border secure, right, that they have denied up until now security for RFK. Moving on Sunday, and boy, does it really get interesting. Now, remember, when this was written, Biden hadn't stepped aside yet, but they were getting ready. Harris's star rises. This is the main Sunday telegram, the Suppress Herald Sunday edition. July 21st. Harris's star rises again at a pivotal moment. They know Biden's done. He's cooked. They knew this a long time ago. And now they better get ready. And here we have the people, the same people that have been talking about Trump is a threat to democracy, getting ready to throw democracy out the door and just anoint the next presidential candidate without a single vote, which is what happened. If President Biden steps aside, Kamala Harris will have to answer questions about the collapse of her 2020 campaign. And then this goes on to do nothing but try to build her up. She was always the dream for us of the next phase beyond Obama, but she didn't live up to it because she ran a terrible campaign, said one Democratic strategist who spoke on condition of anonymity, referring to 2019. This goes on, building up the Biden Harris administration, a whole new Harris. If Harris suddenly becomes the Democrats' 2024 nominee, she would have the support of the entire Democratic campaign establishment, which is desperate to beat Trump a second time. They didn't beat him the first time, but that's beyond the point. And at the same time, as a true, this is again Sunday after the completion of the Republican convention, which, if anybody paid attention and saw the speakers, especially the regular people speaking, was really phenomenal. So Republicans called for unity, but featured far right. Okay, we're all far right. Everybody's far right. If you're not a lib, you're far right. That's pretty much where we're at. Tucker Carlson, Fox host turned podcaster, was among the extremist figures on stage at the RNC. Extremist. I don't think Tucker's much of an extremist. The Republican nominee for governor of North Carolina has said that acceptance of gay people would help bring civilization's end, that transgender people should be arrested for their choice of bathrooms, and that some people need killing. More than likely, completely out of context, and I've heard he's come out and said this is completely a lie and that's not accurate. But that's how they start the piece off. And I'll just read a few paragraphs here because this is just on and on and on BS. But the gathering also underscored how speakers with views once considered fringe have seeped into the conservative mainstream. Researchers who study far right movements, is that like the Southern Poverty Law Center, which is an extension of the Democrat Party? Right. Researchers who study far right movements say their prominence reflects the scope of radicalism that courses through the party and is likely to inform a second Trump presidency should he win in November. Extremism is currency, said Professor John Horgan, director of the Violent Extremism Research Group at Georgia State University. Has he done any work with Black Lives Matter, who just 4 years ago burned down cities, police stations, murdered people, murdered cops, billions and billions of dollars in damage, tried to burn down a federal building in Portland, Oregon? Any research on them? I guess not. From the opening night of the convention, appeals for restraint have mixed uneasily with far more combative language, including chants of fight, fight, fight. Yeah, Trump just got freaking shot, and they can't stand it that he stood up, put his fist up, and said fight. And that's got them completely off balance and changed the whole dynamic. So, of course, you've got to try to put that down in this article. The Washington Compost. Of course, this came from the Compost. Trump's words when he reappeared bloodied after the attack Saturday, the attempted assassination Saturday. And despite efforts to mute the most extreme rhetoric, hostility has still bubbled up, with speakers winning applause for attacks on transgender people and migrants, amongst others. No, it's not attacks on transgender people, it's attacks on guys, men, doing women's sports, and it's attacks on illegal immigrants, millions of them pouring into our country, overwhelming our cities, overwhelming our towns, overwhelming our schools, overwhelming housing, causing homelessness, drugs, crime, murder, rape. Oh, geez, that you're such an extremist to not want all that. Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of Texas, focused his speech on violence committed by undocumented immigrants and accused Democrats of allowing them into the country to gain votes, a theory unsubstantiated by the facts. The fact is that Democrats are very convinced that all these millions of illegal immigrants are one day going to be Democrat voters. And of course, you've got to get in. Robinson, a rising GOP star who's in a tight race for governor of North Carolina, has a history of anti LGBTQ language and Christian nationalism. That's the new one. In other words, if you believe in God, if you believe in Christ, if you're a Christian, if you're Catholic or Protestant or any of the other denominations or Jewish, you're a Christian nationalist. Christian nationalism, trying to scare everybody. I hate to tell you these folks, but there are millions and millions, tens of millions of Christian nationalists in your definition, and there's nothing to be afraid of. Some people need killing. Speaking the same night was Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, Republican of Georgia, who has prompted far-right ideologies, including white nationalism, Christian nationalism, Islamophobia, and various conspiracy theories. Isms. Yep, they're going to try and scare the bejesus out of everybody with isms. And this piece of crap propaganda sheet from the Suppress Herald is more than happy to put it right out there. Charlie Kirk, head of the influential right-wing student group Turning Point USA, was also given a prominent speaking slot. Kirk promotes a Christian nationalist movement that seeks religious influence in all aspects of government and society. When he spoke to the convention, he stuck mostly to economic anxieties among young Americans. Geez, of all, what's the gall he has? He's supposed to go out there, raise his fist, Heil Hitler, and have a little mustache, and he's supposed to go out there, wear like a black uniform with a, you know, talking idiot, talking about economic anxieties amongst young people. The gall. The delegates who announced the vote tallies for Trump that preceded his official nomination included GOP figures with extremist ties. Idaho's Dorothy Moon, for example, ran a letter writing campaign for a militia group leader who was involved in an armed standoff with federal agents. Yeah, trying to protect his own rights, and federal agents using lawfare to force him off land is if I remember right. The Washington Post reported that Republicans involved with the convention included several who were present for the rally and attack on the U.S. Capitol. Ed Martin, the deputy policy director of the convention platform committee, was in the mob outside the Capitol. At least three other people photographed in the crowd that day are serving as delegates. There were about 1 million people there. And just for the record, so was I. I saw what really happened that day on January 6th. I did not go in or near the Capitol. I was on the ellipse for the speeches. I marched with people down to the Capitol grounds, and I watched policemen remove barriers and allow people to move to the Capitol. I did not follow. And they're accusing anybody that was one of those 1 million people that were protesting what they saw as a very questionable election and trying to cancel them. It's really unbelievable. I agree with the call to bring down the temperature, but the fact of the matter is, where the temperature is really high is on the far right, and with figures including convention headliners. Unbelievable. It's not a normal thing to hear Democrats talking about televised military tribunals or going after your enemies or killing people. Going after your enemies? Oh, you mean like lawfare? Like let's put Trump in jail and bankrupt him? And oh, that's right, Steve Bannon for contempt of Congress. Last I knew, the Attorney General right now was found in contempt of Congress. He's not in jail, but Steve Bannon is. So I'm not sure how they get this, but they talk about, you know, going after your enemies. It's lawfare that the left is using, putting peaceful protesters outside of abortion clinics in jail, arresting them at gunpoint, raiding their houses, breaking down doors. It's despicable. Tucker Carlson, the former Fox News host, was ousted last year, but still occupies a powerful perch. Eric, the extremism monitor, said Carlson was arguably the biggest catalyst for mainstreaming replacement theory, which imagines the engineered replacement of white Christian Americans. The ideology has inspired mass shootings, including the 2019 attack on shoppers at a Walmart in El Paso that killed 23. Yep, there they are. Well, then I think the rhetoric, what about the rhetoric that is spewed against Trump? Wouldn't that be the cause of some guy, some jackass kid, 20-year-old, going and trying to kill Trump, trying to assassinate him? They make these connections without any real connection. This is the same old, same old. This is garbage at the highest level and really just pure, unadulterated propaganda. And this week has been really, really strong. And we're not done yet. The opinion page on Sunday, huge. Here it is. If anybody's watching this on video, there you've got it. Let's go after J.D. Vance. I know what a true hillbilly is, and it's not J.D. Vance. And this is a whole article by a Mexican American who goes after J.D. Vance. And it's just the same old garbage. I'm not even going to get into it, but it's just a whole page after J.D. Vance. And then the editorial section, you've got a cartoon says Shillbelly Elegy, a memoir of a political opportunist and a party in crisis, J.D. Vance. And then all of the cartoons are all anti-Trump, anti-Vance, whatever. And then you've got, of course, you've got the actual letters to the editor. As I said, 33 of them this week have been liberal and 3 have been conservative. And here you go, just a quick couple of picks. Column downplays implications of second Trump presidency. So if Trump wins, all voters should become familiar with Project 2025, the MAGA Republican blueprint for the country. And then we've got just highlighting words in here: Christian nationalists. includes funding the Department of Justice, dismantling the FBI, eliminating the Departments of Education and Commerce. This is part of the MAGA's plan, including the SCOTUS ruling on immunity to make the president effectively a king. To my fellow voters, democracy is indeed at stake in this election. The Republican Trumpist Party is a clear and present danger to democracy here and around the world. For the sake of the democratic principles we hold dear, we must prevent a second Trump presidency. Don't you think the editorial board, this is Sunday's paper, Saturday, a week before this, they tried to assassinate him? Don't you think you might not want to print this crap? Because it is crap. Trump was president for 4 years, and we did pretty darn well. The world was safer. The world was more at peace. We weren't at war. The border was more secure. Cities weren't overrun with illegal immigrants. Crime was not as nearly as bad. We were in a much better place, not to mention the economy, inflation, cost of a bag of groceries, all of that. And here's one letter to the editor on the conservative side. Media helped hide issue of Biden's mental acuity. It is clear from post-debate information that the decline in President Biden's mental acuity has been noticed by many in the inner circles. No kidding. We're just reporting on that now. But it took a letter to the editor to get going. So here we go. Now I'm just going to finish up on today's paper. Tuesday, July 23rd, a week and a half after an attempted assassination of Trump, the head of the Secret Service, the didn't earn it head of the Secret Service after an absolutely disastrous, embarrassing, awful testimony before Congress, with even Democrats shaming, ridiculing, telling her to resign, finally quit, ran away. But here we got, at the same time, over the weekend, Biden bowed out. And so now, this is just one issue of the paper. Harris quickly on track for nomination. Within hours of President Biden abandoning his reelection bid, Kamala Harris claimed most of his delegates and won endorsements from key Democrats, including potential rivals. I looked through that, and what I didn't find was any mention of democracy. So Kamala Harris, it appears, is going to be the nominee for President of the United States without a single vote from a single voter in a primary. Basically, they said, well, Biden's out. We picked him, but he's out. So now we're just going to let the party bosses do this. And, this argument I heard today on the radio, oh, well, nobody stepped up to challenge her. Well, they didn't have time. The party bosses fixed this behind the scenes. You know this. And they were getting set up to do this. They had to make this all happen. They were putting this in place, and basically they told all comers, including Gavin Newsom and others, you're out. We're going to try to put Kamala, we're going to steal this election for her. We're going to use the racist, misogynist trope day in and day out endlessly, even though she is the most ill-prepared, inadequate. I can't even bring it to words how bad she would be as a president. She's been an awful vice president. Word salads everywhere, cackle, laugh. I mean, that's just personality stuff. But her decisions, the way she's handled herself from being a prosecutor to being the Attorney General of California, she is what they project onto Republicans, a narcissistic dictator in waiting. So here's the paper. Harris quickly on track for nomination. Democratic delegates in main lineup behind Harris. So That's all good, even though they didn't have all of the delegates on the call. So, puff piece, Harris, great. Everybody in Maine, the Maine delegates, all behind it. The age old question looks different now. Will it matter to young voters? Trump's the old guy now. So now it's Trump's old. And so that's three. Secret Service director tells Congress we failed. And then, of course, she quit the next day. Democrats across country feeling relieved and hopeful. Three puff pieces on Kamala Harris. And then you get the editorial section. Trump's hypocrisy knows no bounds. Time to take a stand against gun violence. Republican values leave other Americans behind. America is already great. Democratic hopes now rest on Harris. Is she up to the job? That's the only even close one. The alternative to voting Democrat is hard to stomach. So basically, and then the back page, Democrats plan virtual roll call ahead of their convention with Harris favored. So basically, the entire paper is the Democratic Presidential Campaign Committee wrote all those articles for Harris to pivot and move. And now we got to get behind her. But boy, we got don't have a lot of time. And we're going to see the most propagandized suppress Herald ever, which is hard to believe considering what it's been for 10 years that I know of. So there you have it. It's been quite a week. And the propaganda papers, as I've said, propaganda is what our papers are. And politics is local. And as we know, so is propaganda. And they're doing a hell of a job right now. More later. Thanks for tuning in.